Okay, we're going to give this a go. Show doesn't really have a name yet. I'm calling it the NASCAR Weekly Forecast. My name is Ross Blacker. I've been following and betting NASCAR for a long time. So, we're going to go ahead and get going. The format normally on a normal week is going to be some intro and strategy, basic details of the course, then a recap of last week, which we can't do this week since since it's the first show. Then we're going to do some relevant metrics, and then I'm going to do some picks. So first of all, let's get into this week. This week, NASCAR has been around for 75 years. This is the first time ever in the history of the series that they've done a street course. Obviously, they've done a lot of road course racing, but this is a street course. This is the Grant Park 220, also called the Chicago Street Race. It's in obviously Chicago, Illinois, 100 laps, 2.2 miles a lap. So doing the math, 220 laps. Weather on Sunday looks okay, but this year with NASCAR, what they did was they have a rain tire. So the rain tire will be used if there's wet weather. Speaking of tires, even though this is the first ever street race, this Goodyear tire code that's being used this week is the same tire that was used at COTA, Circuit of the Americas, and Sonoma, the two road courses. So let's dive right into it. When you talk setup, and we're going to look at some metrics as we go. When you talk setup, in terms of the car, certain teams are better at a road course setup, street course setup than not. For example, Penske, which is a top team, Joey Logano, Ryan Blaney, their road course records haven't been great over a pretty significant sample size. So we need to look at that. I made the decision going into the week that I'm going to handicap this race like a road course, just because it's the most similar to a street course. This course has 12 turns. Now, usually on a normal week, these guys are used to turning left, right? Correct. They're used to turning left, going around in an oval. This road course is right-hand dominant. There's a more right-hand turn aspect to it. However, road courses are mostly right-hand dominant as well. So it's not that huge of a transition in terms of, now it's a huge setup transition from an oval to a road course, but I don't think it's a significant transition from a road course to a street course. I believe that the stock car on a street course is gonna operate and work and function pretty similar to a stock car on a road course. So that's where we're going in this week. We're honing in on guys who are proficient and have a demonstrated track record of success on road courses. That's all we can do. As I heard someone earlier say on a podcast, another one I listened to, if they bring this race back next year, which they may announce this weekend, it'll be interesting to see this, if this novelty event or race, what conclusions we can draw. Thus far, we have no conclusions to draw. We're just going to have some practice and qualifying on Saturday, which we could talk about the dynamics of that. But there's very, very little to go on when it comes to this race, which is kind of ironic. It's the first podcast I'm doing, and it's the one with the least amount of supporting background information. So there's no track history, which we've discussed. This is a huge event in the NASCAR community. It's one of 3 races on big NBC and not USA until the start of the playoffs. So obviously this race is going to be on NBC. The race begins at 5:30 p.m. Eastern time on Saturday. And then 2 other iconic tracks, Indianapolis and Daytona. Obviously, those people are going to bring the eyeballs to the sets just because those tracks are known. So no stage break. So what that means is they're breaking the race into stages. There's 100 laps. So the first stage is 20 laps. Second stage is 25 laps. Third stage is 55 laps. However, there will be no breaks. There will be a caution for maybe one lap, but there won't be I take that back and I'm not re-recording this. There won't be a caution. After lap 20, it just goes, there'll be stage points. The top 10 guys will get stage points, but then they'll just go to the next stage. So there won't be a yellow flag caution during that time where guys can go in and, get tires or whatever. All the pitting is either going to be under caution if there's a crash, which people are projecting carnage of this, so that there could be a bunch of crashes, or there's going to be green flag pit stops. So at a normal road course race, there's guys that short pit. So what they'll do is they'll come in before the end of the stage and they'll get tires and fuel. They'll do that more to get track position, and they're more concerned about winning the race than they are about getting the stage points, which count towards the end of the season for playoff rankings. In the last two, now this is the first year NASCAR has done this, but in the first two races this year, there's road course races, COTA and the other one at Sonoma, there's been more continuity of the races without the stage breaks. So for someone who's new to NASCAR, not really a big deal. To more experienced NASCAR bettors, I don't think it's a huge deal, to be honest. I think that the cream is going to rise to the top, especially with the setups and especially in the road course. So let's go ahead and I'm going to share my screen here, and we're going to look at some metrics that are going to be relevant for this week. So if you look at this, Chris Buescher is a guy who doesn't really have a propensity to win, and his average starting position on road courses is 15. So he's not qualifying very well. Now you got to keep in mind last year, and so 2022 is significant when we look at metrics, because that's when the next gen car came out. So I have another chart which has the last 10 races, which has the previous gen car and this car. But starting in 2022, there was a new car. So here's the metrics, and here's how they shake out. You look at a guy like Chris Buescher, he only 2 top 5s, 7 top 10s, with a 15.2 or whatever starting position. So Buescher is a guy that knows how to drive these road courses. He's very patient, and he's able to work his way to the top. Chase Elliott's another guy. Chase Elliott's a guy who we actually like in a matchup this week. Chase Elliott's a guy who has shown a lot of success on road courses. For those of you who follow the series, Chase Elliott was out for a little bit this year after sustaining a skiing accident, but he's been fine. First couple races back, actually there's a 600-mile race that was tough for him with his back injury, but he had a great week last week, 2 straight top 5s, even though they weren't on road courses. I like Elliott. I think he's very consistent. Hendrick Motorsports and Chevrolet is, a very trusted name in the sport, so I like him. Michael McDowell is a guy. Michael McDowell is known mostly for being a super speedway racer, but Michael McDowell, as you can see, is really good on road courses. Austin Cindric is a guy, another guy who's past Daytona 500 winner. Austin Cindric is a guy that is pretty proficient on road courses. He actually did some IMSA racing, which is another discipline of racing, which is on a road. So, and on a street, actually. So he has some street experience, but he's a good road course racer. Tyler Reddick is a guy, I would say feast or famine with him. I mean, if you look, 3 wins, but that 11.4 finishing position. That was kind of skewed a little bit this year at Sonoma, where it was a bad pit stop cycle. He got into an accident. He finished the race, but he finished 33rd. That does skew those stats. Without that 33rd place finish, he's 8.5 average finish. So anyone who likes Reddick, who we do this week, I wouldn't let that average finish scare you away. Other guys I went ahead and highlighted. Chris Bell is a guy. Chris Bell is a top 10 machine, top 5 machine normally. Last week I had him. He had a top 5 in the last race at Nashville. So Chris Bell is a guy that's pretty consistent. AJ Allmendinger is known as a road course ringer. He won last week's Xfinity race at Nashville. He's a guy that does very well in road courses. Kaulig Racing, his team has not been great this year, but AJ Allmendinger, they say on a street course, you need to be aggressive. You need to be afraid to kind of throw it in on those turns. And there's 2 main straightaways on this course between turn 12 and turn 1, which is obviously the start finish. And then between turns 5 and 6, there's long straightaways. So basically, these guys are going to be going in excess of 160 miles an hour and then stop on a dime and do a hairpin turn. So AJ Allmendinger, very aggressive driver, experienced on road course, experienced on street racing. We like AJ Allmendinger is a guy who you could always count on in these spots. Martin Truex Jr. is the hottest driver in the series. He has a road course win, which came at Sonoma during this season. But look at his average finish, 15.6. He's not a great road course racer. He just has, right now, he's on fire. And maybe that'll translate to this setting on the street course. Maybe it won't. I tend to fade him this week. That's a guy I'm going to fade. And then if you look at other guys, Ryan Blaney, Brad Keselowski, Denny Hamlin, and Bubba Wallace, those are guys who just have not really performed well on road courses. You know, if you look, four top tens among them. And these are elite drivers. These are guys, Blaney and Hamlin, by virtue of their win, will definitely be in the playoffs this year. Keselowski has a very good chance to be in the playoffs this year. These are playoff drivers that you just, when it comes to a road course and a street course, I just shy away from. I wouldn't touch them. You know, let them beat me. They're going to be enticing prices, but if you look at their past history, they're not good. Here's last 10 results on road courses, which is similar. It's one more race. So Buescher, you had the extra top 10, Reddick, you know, Elliott, Logano, McDowell. Logano's an interesting guy here. Logano's a guy whose average finish isn't that high, but if you look at Joey Logano and the NASCAR series, he, you know, at the LA Coliseum this year, who won? Joey Logano, going to a place they've never raced at. Bristol Dirt 2 years ago. Now, the series had been on dirt, but it hadn't been since the 50s and 60s. They went to Bristol Dirt in 2022. Who won? Joey Logano. So people are saying that this week, because it's a new format and something these guys haven't seen, that Joey Logano does well on new things. I ain't buying it because I just feel as though this has much more of a similarity to a road course. And I'm just leaning on those road course guys. Michael McDowell, as you could see, does well as well. So laps led. Now, laps led is really only a metric we look at for guys that we're going to bet either outrights or top 3. And it's a great indicator. So if you look at Denny Hamlin qualifies very well. So he's going to lead laps because on a road course, especially some of these road courses, it's hard to pass. So he has 89 laps led. But if we go and look at his average finish, you know, in the since 2022, what was it? 20.6. So the guys who lead a lot of laps are Chase Elliott, Tyler Reddick. Those are 2 guys that are going to be short prices this week. I believe Elliott's 5-1, most places on the win end. Reddick is 6.5-1 plus 650. Those are guys that are going to be short prices because they have a demonstrated track record of success in this setting. Now we look at speed ratings. Speed ratings are when the green flag speed, and they're determined. So there were 2 races this year that were on road courses. Chase Elliott did not run Coda due to his back injury. He ran Sonoma. But if you look at the setups this year, and how guys have done, AJ Allmendinger has been the fastest. His average speed ranking is 4th. Kyle Busch 2nd, Tyler Reddick 3rd, McDowell and Truex are tied. Again, Truex was really, really fast at Sonoma when he won, wasn't very fast at Coda. So, and we'll go on the next page and look at, a bigger sample size of speed ratings. What this shows me is AJ Allmendinger and Colleague, their program is really set up for road courses and it sends street courses. AJ Allmendinger wants to make the playoffs. There's very few opportunities for him except the super speedway, which there's a couple of those coming up, and road and street racing. So not a conventional oval for AJ Allmendinger. So this is where his strength lies. And his car has been fast both times. I think he'll qualify pretty well. And as you'll see later, I think he's a guy we're going to focus on and we're going to like. If you look in the markets this week already, AJ Allmendinger opened at some places at 16-1, and you can't find him for anything, better than 9-1 now. He's 8-1 if he practices and qualifies well. He could be 7.5, 7.5-1. So AJ Allmendinger is a guy that people who are even casual fans associate him with good road course and street course racing. So he's going to be bet. So we want to get on him early if we like him, which we do. Okay. Here's fastest on road courses since 2022. So this speaks to setup. This speaks to the team. And if you look, we have a bunch of different manufacturers. Chase Elliott's obviously been the fastest. Chase Elliott's Chevy. Tyler Reddick right now drives a Toyota as part of 23XI, but Tyler Reddick until this year was part of Richard Childress Racing, which is Chevy. Michael McDowell is Ford. Ford, if you look at the markets this week, winning manufacturer, they're almost 4-1. The very few Fords are fast on these courses. Then you look at AJ Allmendinger, he's a Chevy in Colleague, and then you look at Chris Buescher. Also, so Chris Buescher has been fast. Chris Buescher is a guy that has the best average finish. He's got top 10 speed. Chris Bell, top 10 speed. Ross Chastain and Daniel Suarez from Trackhouse Racing, they each have a win on a road course since 2022, and they have decent speed. But again, going down the list, and Cindric has decent speed. Going down that list, Hamlin, Keselowski, and Wallace, not only do they have subpar finishes, but they have subpar speeds. So what this is going to teach us is that these guys who are at the top are probably going to roll off the trucks this week, the haulers fast, and they're going to qualify well, they're going to have good track position, and they're going to be there at the end. There's a bit of a wild card in this race because there's 12 turns, more recipe for chaos, for wrecks, for guys being knocked out. But you've got to think that in most of these road courses and now a street course, the guys that traditionally do well, they have that fine line between aggressiveness and patience when they have to. It's almost like a super speedway. You got to stay out of the trouble. You got to be there at the end. There's 37 cars that start this week. I haven't seen a prop yet, but I bet now it's a long lead lap. There's usually a prop, how many cars will finish on the lead lap. Here, since a lap is 2.2 miles, I'm guessing that anyone who finishes the race should finish on the lead lap, unless they have to go to a garage. I don't know how that's going to work with major damage, but I reckon only 25 to 28 cars will actually finish this race. Just these turns, they're very sharp. There's just a recipe for a lot of carnage. So in other words, the speed is going to be great. but it's also a driver experience. But the speed, I think, when I'm modeling and I'm doing my handicapping, the speed speaks just as much to the driver's skill as it speaks to setup and the teams giving their driver a fast car. So I think that in the case of Chase Elliott, he gets into a fast hot rod every time at road courses and theoretically at street course. Same with Reddick, same with McDowell, Allmendinger, and Buscher. Surprise, surprise, those guys are the fastest. And if we go back and look, they also have done the best. So there's a direct correlation there, both from having strong team and strong driver. We're going to go down here. So these are my tier rankings for road courses, regardless of value. So I definitely put these 5 guys at the top: Chase Elliott, Tyler Reddick, AJ Allmendinger, Chris Buscher, and Christopher Bell. I think those 5 guys you can trust. I think those 5 guys are guys that are going to be there. They have good setups, they have fast cars, and they have proven to do it on road courses. Now, if road course success has no correlation to a street course, nobody knows. But again, it's gambling, it's betting, it's taking a chance, and you're looking for the most likelihood of success. So when we're doing that, we're really looking at guys that we feel have a transferable skill. Again, I've said it a million times. I'll say it again, probably for the last time, or maybe not. Once we go over our picks, I'll say it again. But good on a road course, good on a street course. So we're really basing it on that. Michael McDowell, Austin Cindric. Now, McDowell and Cindric are also good on super speedways. What do super speedways require? Patience. Those guys I also trust. Chastain and Suarez, I don't necessarily trust. They've had some success. Chastain won last week in Nashville. Pretty clean race for him. If people know, he's kind of the bad boy of the series, checkers or wreckers with him, if you will. But he did a great job last week, clean. He obviously had the best car. There were some restarts, not a ton of restarts, but he fired off, gained separation. Truex wasn't able to catch him. Truex is the hottest car on the series, came in on a burner, wasn't able to catch Chase, Ross Chastain. So I put them in tier 3, but they're guys who, especially Chastain in the markets is pretty short. So I wouldn't touch him. I don't trust him enough to justify that price. So now we're going to go to the third segment of this, and this is my plays for the week. So as I explained to Cameron, I live in Massachusetts, so I have access to 5 online sports books, and I shopped some lines. Chris Buscher at plus money for a top 10 is a no-brainer. I don't care how he qualifies, because if you look, 3 of his top 10s have come when he started outside the top 20. So I expect him to qualify well, but if he doesn't, it wouldn't scare me away. However, if he qualifies well, you're not going to see anything close to this plus 100, not even close. I even looked at Caesars when the top 10 markets came out early Tuesday. He was already minus 160. So if you can find Chris Buscher at a plus number for a top 10, I'd get him now. I would get him now. Same with Michael McDowell. Michael McDowell is a minus number in a lot of places I looked. He's 120 on Barstool. I actually grabbed these 2 early in the week. I just think given their past success, these guys haven't had a ton of top 5s, and they haven't won on road courses, but they're consistent drivers. And if you think of it, there's 37 cars. So they don't even have to beat. We're not even asking them to beat 3/4 of the field to get a top 10. It's less than 3/4 of the field they need to beat to get a top 10. And if you think there's a lot of back markers, there's guys that are going to get into wrecks. Now, they could get into wrecks, but if you look at their past history on road courses, they have done well and they've avoided the wrecks. So Buscher and McDowell, top 10s. I love AJ Allmendinger for a top 10 this week. However, I can't touch him at minus 150, and it's sure to go down. His value is going down. I like the 165 number at Barstool for a top 5. That's what I'm taking him at. And I've already put this play in. I think it's a good play. I just I think that, yeah, I like him to finish in the top 10, but there's just no value there. So again, there's difference between betting and gambling. I like him at a top 5. I think it's a good play. I would go, pretty hard on this play. Outright. The reason I'm taking Tyler Reddick over Chase Elliott at this point really comes down to a couple factors. And one of the main factors, honestly, is price. So the way I bet NASCAR is I will dedicate 80% of my bankroll, 80% of my bankroll to bets before the race, whether that's 50%, 50-50 practice before practice and qualifying, after practice and qualifying. Some places practice and qualifying doesn't matter. I think it matters here, but I think that the markets could really adjust. So I'm going to put a bunch of my plays in. Of the 80% of my plays, I'm going to put them in before practice and qualifying. Then I think the other 20% are live plays. So once you get a feel of the race, and again, there's only 100 laps. Once they're 50 laps into the race and you get a feel, and maybe there's some carnage already and there's some attrition, then you look at places that have top 3s and win bets, and you try to get a guy. Now, are we going to be able to find Tyler Reddick at 10-1 live? I don't know, because track position, it's not like in a super speedway race where the last restart, you could come from 8th and 9th and you could be on fresh tires. The other guys aren't. You had a good pitch strategy and you just cruise on by them. It's not necessarily like that, but would I feel more comfortable taking Tyler Reddick at plus 650 before the race, or would I be more likely to take him at 5-1 with 40 laps left? It's a toss-up because he's run those first 60 laps well. He's in one piece. He knows how to ride this course. So you have more of a sample size, not just practice and qualifying. You have real racing, and he's in good shape. So part of me thinks that, I think that if the race starts and it becomes a merry-go-round and guys that qualify well are up front, you're going to find Chase Elliott at 2-1. I wouldn't chase Chase Elliott at 2-1 in a live market. I just wouldn't do it. 4-1 would be my par maybe for him. 4 or 5-1 on him and Reddick live would be guys I'd be looking at. And then, but again, because road courses, there's more predictability, and theoretically there should be in a street course, the usual suspects, Allmendinger, Buscher, Cindric, McDowell, Bell, Reddick, and Elliott are guys that are going to be up there and are going to be a factor. Truex could be, but he hasn't really shown it. Look at that average finish. It's not too good. So in terms of the live market, it's going to be, really getting a guy, and not really looking for a ton of value. So maybe this week it's more 85%, 15% in terms of before or after. And I've heard people say on podcasts already this week, they're not going super hard just because it's something new. I tend to think that, it's not my biggest play of the year. It's not a whale play, but it's a significant play because I do well on road courses. So I'm thinking I'll do well on street courses because, again, I just named 7 guys. Those 7 guys, probably 5 of them are going to be in the mix. So who's going to be in the mix. And that's a huge factor on weeks like this because William Byron's a guy who's been dominant this year. William Byron, not a good road course racer. Kyle Larson, not particularly good. Joey Logano, okay, but not great. Ryan Blaney's having a great year. Not great on road courses. Denny Hamlin, not great. So some of those usual suspects just aren't really good. I have a rule on matchups that I don't like to take guys at minus money, but I just think Chase Elliott, I wouldn't have touched this if it was 150, but at 140, and I found it on DraftKings, to me, over Kyle Larson, that is just, I mean, he's 8-1 against Kyle Larson, or 8-1-1. No, 8-1. I apologize. 8-1 against Kyle Larson last night on road courses. That's pretty good. And I think that Elliott's a guy that is coming into his own this year off the injury. He's a proven commodity on road courses. You look at his speed, you look at his finishes. He just is far superior to Kyle Larson when it comes to road courses. I don't think this number. Chase Elliott, look at his average starting position on road courses. It's 6th. He's going to qualify super well. So this number is not going to go up. Excuse me, it's going to go down. So I would recommend grabbing it now. So again, Buescher and McDowell, top 10. I think Buescher, obviously nothing in sports and betting is a sure thing. Buescher is my 5-star play, my lock play. I just think he, at plus money, it's very, very good value. So Buescher and McDowell for a top 10. AJ Allmendinger, they call him Dinger, for a top 5. Outrights, I would go Tyler Reddick. I'd sprinkle on that a little bit before practice and qualifying. Again, another guy with speed and with good starting position. The value on him to be had is now, probably not after practice and qualifying, not live. Then the matchup, I really like Chase Elliott over Kyle Larson. The guys I would fade this week, and I didn't write this down, but I could just verbally say it, would obviously be Denny Hamlin, Ryan Blaney, and even a Kyle Larson and a Chastain. I just don't, trust those guys in this discipline. So again, and I'll go back to being on full screen as we wrap this up. Again, I think this is going to be an exciting week. If you're a NASCAR fan, you follow the sport on a daily basis like I do. It's an unknown, it's a novelty, and it's going to be super exciting to see how these cars react. Right now, the only experience these guys have gotten on the Chicago street course is iRacing, which is a simulated game. Then they've been on simulators. They've never been on track. Also, you have to look at a factor of the weather. The weather on Saturday does not look good. I'm not sure if NASCAR is going to have them practice and qualify in rain tires. I don't think they will. From what I've heard, they won't. So there's a possibility that the first time they get on this course is when the green flag waves Sunday afternoon, 5:30 Eastern on NBC. And then you're relying on guys who have a past track record. That's all you can do. That's all you can do in handicapping and modeling. Look at guys that have a good past track record. Look at guys who have that level of success, both from a driver ability level and a car setup level with the speed ratings, and go with them. So that's going to wrap up this show. I had written down what I was going to call it, but I don't really know. People could tweet at me at Ross Blacker, let me know a good name. NASCAR Weekly Forecast, maybe. I don't know if somebody could come up with a catchy name, but thanks for watching. And then, we're going to do this every week. So I know in a couple weeks, the series heads up to my home track here in New Hampshire. So that's going to be exciting. I know Atlanta is coming up. So a lot of exciting stuff coming up. And those races, there's more of a sample size. There's more of a, past history. And then also another thing, again, just before we wrap up, is trends. I think if you look at guys that are hot, like a Truex, Blaney, those guys are hot. But again, it's apples to oranges when they've been hot on ovals and not necessarily on road course. I mean, Truex, you can make the exception. Yeah, he won at Sonoma. That's a road course, could translate to street course. But then you look at the 20.8 average finish over a 10 race sample size, and it says, maybe not so much. All right, so we will be back at it next week. hoping to record these on Wednesdays, and we will go from there. Hope everyone enjoyed it. If anyone has any questions, you could always reach out to me on Twitter at Ross Blacker, or my email is blackerross, BLACKER Ross @gmail.com. Hope you guys liked it, and let's cash some tickets.